You are listening to the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Willard, and I'm sitting here only with Bradley, the man with no last name, on the board. Mike had some family stuff he had to take care of. So Bradley and I are in the studio. Just him and I are going to kind of talk and chat and just kind of have this discussion. But before we kind of discuss what the topic we're going to have, let us announce the coffee that we are drinking.
It's kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, it's kind of underwhelming.
I don't even think we deserve the coffee music for this.
No, we literally I kind of forgot the coffee at the house, so we decided to go to Tim Hortons, everyone. And I'm drinking some black Tim Hortons coffee. Bradley's drinking probably the highest sugar content amount of coffee that they have there.
Probably.
Probably.
The Oreo one's worse.
There's an Oreo one of those? Do you want to tell what that is?
It's iced mocha with
Iced-
cold foam.
Iced mocha with cold foam.
It's the white girl drink.
The what? Jeez. But it actually looks pretty good, but I could just tell.
What? It's not that sweet. It's just black coffee with foam on the top.
But it's mocha. That's definitely chocolate looking. I still hate the Beebs brew.
Yeah.
Logo.
I don't like the Beebs.
It's very depressing. So the colorway that they did for his logo reminds me of a back, so say you go antiquing and there's like a room or storage locker, like the really old depressing clothes you find in the back of an antique locker. That's the colorway of the Bieber Tim Hortons, and it's a terrible colorway.
Like
It's
the yellow and black striped shirt.
Lack of joy. That's how Tim Hortons decided to do their Bieber colorway collaboration.
They should have
it's awful.
They should have made one side look like it's falling off because half his face is paralyzed.
What?
They should make half the logo paralyzed.
Is that true?
Yeah. His face is paralyzed.
Did he have a stroke?
He has some weird disease where he it's temporary, but his face is halfly paralyzed.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's
his
the first
eye
time
is
hearing this.
stuck or something like that too.
Really?
Yeah, it's all the way up his face, his jaw, his eye, and
That's so
ear.
interesting. That's literally the first time I've heard that.
Really?
Yeah. But Tim Hortons, everyone in Buffalo, you know what I'm talking about.
Or Canada.
Or Canada. Good old standby, Tim Hortons.
It has a maple leaf on the top. How do you forget Canada?
Yeah. I don't know. I just
Okay.
do. But, we got to the end of the music there. But today's topic that we were talking on actually came from my secondary Meeting on Main lecture that we have. I did a talk. Our technology was down. The technology wasn't that friendly that week. You had some light blow up and start shooting flames out of that, Bradley?
Well, that was just the lights. The sound was fine.
Oh, the sound was fine.
I just didn't want to record it.
Oh, Bradley just didn't want to hear me record. That's great. That's great. So, yeah, it's from a Meeting on Main lecture that I gave back in May. My next one is August 18th on miracles at Mike's Church, Centerpoint Community Church on Depew. And we're just kind of going to discuss what I talked about. Rather than you guys hearing my actual lecture and sermon, we're just kind of walk through this with you guys, and Bradley and I will just stop and have conversations along the way. How's that sound, Bradley?
Sure.
Perfect. So I titled the talk, Communication, a Methodology Towards Christ-likeness. And one of the things I wanted to do was, I added some of my own 2 cents in some of this information, but I took a lot from communication scholars and people, Christians and theologians, that just really focus on the need for not just people in general, but even Christians in this day and age, learning how to communicate better, learning what communication does and how it can affect you. And I think a lot of our problems that we have within the Christian community is our training and lack of ability to be able to communicate well.
I agree. I think that to add to that too, our communication, especially today in 2022, is so surprisingly terrible.
Right.
Because we have the best way to communicate that human history has ever had, and we suck at communicating.
Yeah, and it's so weird, right? We believe that the Bible is God's word, and it's so strange to me how, as Christians, we seem to just continue to fall in the negative direction how we communicate within the Christian community and within the not Christian community. But it's so strange because Scripture is loaded. Loaded with hundreds of verses on how we ought to communicate in advice and context on how we are to hold ourselves in verbal and nonverbal types of communication. And I asked the question, and why do we think that's the case, right? And I think Dr. Muehlhoff gives a perfect answer for this. And there's a few answers we're going to go more into, but Dr. Muehlhoff believes the Christian worldview is what he calls a counter-public worldview. And a public is basically when people come together to discuss common concerns, and these concerns are who they are and what they should do, and they're basically constructing social reality together. A counter-public maintains at some level an awareness of this subordinate status. And we know in the gospel, we find out that Christians and those who hold the Christian worldview take a counter-public worldview versus the rest of the world out there. I mean, Jesus talks about it in John 17, like, you don't belong to this fleshly world. You don't belong to it. Paul in Romans 12 says, don't conform to the patterns of this world. And how this world, apart from the Christian faith, communicate is not the greatest way of communicating with social media and online, and Christians have been terribly trained with that. What do you think about that? You agree with that,
I agree
Brad?
with that, yeah. I think that Christians for the last, 50 years have done a really bad job at communicating. Even before social media and like the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Like the average person has a negative view of what Christians are because of how bad we've done at communicating.
100%.
Like, you look at, oh, you're a Christian, you hate these people. Well, no, people just are bad at explaining how we view things. Like, you could use homosexuality, for example. A lot of gay people think that Christians hate them. That's not the case. Like, Christians are just bad at explaining what they believe.
And some Christians come off, even if you can explain it well, even come off just an attitude of like, God hates you.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
It's like it's a poor understanding of the Bible, basically.
Yes, 100%. And unfortunately, what has been created because of our lack of communicating well is what they call a cultural war rhetoric. And basically, the idea of this is communities become so entrenched in their ideological positions that any serious conversation or consideration of the opposite perspective almost seems as like a compromise, where I am not going to talk to you because I don't want to hear what you say, and I'm just sort of entrenched in my echo chamber of people. And when that happens, we become not dialogue-centered people, but more position-centered people. And we see this within the politics. My goodness, politicians go, well, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat. I'm done talking to the other side. And as soon as you get there, there's a massive problem.
Well, it's like part of that is bad too, because you can't like learn more if you only have people telling you, if you only have yes men surrounding you. They only tell you things that you want to hear. One, it makes your faith weak and your beliefs weak. Mm-hmm. But two, you never like learn anything. Yeah,
I agree. And one of the things I was concerned about when doing this study was how online communication has affected us. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of research on the effect of online that has on churches, on just individuals. And I have 5 major points that I really wanted to bring out in this talk of what online has done for our communication skills. And there's a ton of them, but I laid out the top 5 that I found very, very interesting. So the first one is this. Online has taught people and individuals, and they feel unrestrained by normal social conventions, resulting in unfiltered communication. We have forgotten how to filter communication, and we just sort of say whatever we want, whenever we want, because we can hide behind the screens. And
to be fair, I would say whatever I want, regardless.
Well, right, but kind of. Well, let me get to my other points. Secondly, we're shielded from the impact of communication. And what I mean by that is, if you're online, you can take off the rhetorical gloves and not experience the immediate results. And
sure.
Do you see what I'm saying? So
yeah, like I could. And if I'm sitting here and I insult you to your face, the repercussion is that you hit me in the face.
Or not only that, but you can see my facial structure,
Yes.
my emotions, my body language, and even you, Bradley, will adjust to that. Even though you're very
Yes.
blatant, you adjust to
Yes.
certain things.
You read the room, basically.
Read the room.
But online,
Can't do that.
you can't do that.
You can't do that, and you can't see the face of the person and realize, man, even if what I'm saying is true, I need to portray it or say it in a different manner. And online communication cannot give that to you.
Yeah.
And it's destroying how we communicate.
A note on that, and
Yeah.
not to be political or anything like that, but I found it was kind of interesting, and this is kind of bringing it up, was they were doing studies in 2020 and 2021 about the effect that masking children has, like young children, like kindergartners, who are learning speech still, who are learning to communicate with their peers, and
Just seeing the lack of facial
like motion
communication.
and they found that like something like 1 out of like 2 children was going to have like an issue with communicating in the future, just because like you can't read the face. And so nowadays, like with online becoming dominant for schools and stuff like that, I wonder how much more of an impact that's going to have on children and people in general.
And I think the false assumption here is communication is only verbal.
Yes.
Communication is extremely nonverbal as well. In fact, we learn a lot about people and things in this world by witnessing nonverbal communication.
Yes.
And we can train ourselves through nonverbal communication. And online talk and just posting on Facebook and social, we're not seeing how these people are responding, which is extremely crucial. Third, what's what they call no real-time response. And they found out that the more time you had to stew in someone's comment, the more you wrote, and the more you wrote, the angrier you
I can see that.
began to write. And so, and I talked about this. Can you imagine sitting with someone at Starbucks? And I go, Bradley, I really don't appreciate that you did this, and here's why I think you're wrong. And all of a sudden, you crossed your arms, and you looked at me, and you sat there for 2 hours just stewing. I'd be like, we need to call 911. Something just burst in his brain. He had a stroke. I don't know what happened, but there's no real-time response, right?
Yeah.
And one, like you said, you can stew in it and get angrier, and you don't communicate well with others to figure out, hey, should I respond in this way? Secondly, we are becoming people who are training themselves to need 6 hours to be able to respond. And as someone who does apologetics, it's one thing to go, oh, that's a good thought. I don't really know. Let me get back to you. It's another thing to go, I need to be able to, oh, that's a fantastic question. Let me give you what I think. And I need to be able to respond in a real-time manner appropriately with correct communication and truth. And we are training ourselves not to be able to have that type of response, which is not
and
a good
I think
thing.
a lot of the times, not so much like the stewing, like, I mean, that's definitely there, like the stewing and the like waiting like 4 hours to reply. But it also causes, if I say something that you disagree with, you know, there's a lot of people that will just go over and they'll Google what they want to hear.
Right.
And then they'll just quote an article that they haven't read.
They've never studied.
They've
They have
never
no
studied.
background
They
of
just quote it.
I
and
see
then
doctor in front of it. That must be good. Let's send it to this person like it's a win-win argument.
There was a debate that I watched, and somebody quoted. They literally pulled up on their phone and they just clicked the first article that they found that matched what they wanted to say.
Yeah. Without probably
so-
reading it, right?
They just, without reading it, they just read the title and they just said this article says this. And the guy that was like open for, it was like an open like mic kind of thing, like you can come up and like talk and whatever, ask questions. And the guy that was sitting there was just like, wait a second, I know that article. If you read down a couple lines, it disproves your point.
Yeah. People do it all the time.
Yeah.
People will.
But it just causes you to be dumb.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't.
Look at the. Let's be honest. With the vaccines, with the masks, people did that all the time. Post it on Facebook, and it's like, well, did you read the article?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I read the first page. It's like, okay, but that's not a good thing.
Yeah, but do you understand it?
Yeah, that's
Like,
not a good thing.
Yeah.
And fourth is they said we are tempted to mimic the incivility we regularly see occurring on social media. And there's And so here's an interesting fact. Scientists have identified and labeled certain neurons as monkey see, monkey do neurons, or what they call mirror neurons. And what they're finding is the more you see people do this with social media online, Facebook, Instagram, the more you're literally changing the physical structure of your brain and neurons to then create habits to do this as well.
Can you explain that a little? Like what habits are you trying to?
So what we're trying to do is create habits of good communication. Online is designed to create habits of not communication.
Okay,
of not good communication. And what is happening is we're training ourselves to be able to do that as well. And how we train ourselves are when we see things, our neurons start to fire in different ways, or the monkey see or monkey do neurons, mirror neurons. And what we're doing is we're creating a mental habit to create our habits that when we do respond, we mimic how the culture on social media responds.
Okay.
And this is a literal physical neuron type structure that they're measuring in the neuroscience, which is scary. And do you know what I've read too? And I've said this comment before, and you guys can go back to the podcast. They're finding that churches are doing the same thing.
Oh,
and what they're doing is they're seeing that online speaks in these bumper stickers or the one-liners, and churches are training themselves to preach theology and their mission because they think they're reaching the people. But statistically, what we know is, in Limbaugh, Dr. Limbaugh pointed this out, that people who are looking at the church's Facebook are the people who are following the church.
Yeah.
They think they're doing good missions on social media when statistically that's just false.
Yeah.
Statistically, it's false. And I forgot what podcast he brought up those statistics.
It was the last time that we had David.
Was it? And yeah, he's like, it's just false. The people are 95% or 97% of people are following you. Believe what you do anyways. You're not reaching the world statistically in the way you want because it's not set up to do that.
Yeah, it's the recycling logo.
Yeah.
You're literally just
the algorithm's not set up for that.
No.
And so the churches, what they're doing then is training their own people through social media to become one-line and 5-second theologians. And they're finding this within the Christians and how they respond to their beliefs and how they offer their beliefs are being trained by social media, which is a terrible thing.
Oh yeah.
And it's just
Especially
not a good
if it's being trained by Twitter.
Yeah, it's just not a good thing. And
I don't want that.
The fifth is what they say it ultimately leads to gridlock. And gridlock is very interesting because it leads to a terrible conclusion. This is what they write about the idea of communication gridlock. It's when communication is happening but leads nowhere. When communication becomes gradually entrenched and unwilling to compromise. When communication is void of humor or affection, kind of what makes us human.
Yeah.
When communication starts vilifying each other and leads to more extreme and polarizing views. And ultimately, when we just simply disengage. And as Christians, we are called to not disengage. How can we think we have a mission in this world of going to make disciples of the nations when what we have done is we've gridlocked ourselves in these polarizing corners and refuse to communicate and just disengage with the world? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Christians are disengaging with each other over rapture topics, over revelation topics, over foreknowledge topics. I mean, we see this within the fold of Christianity, and it's not helpful. It's not healthy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I think that, one of the things that I've noticed in my time, now I will say just real quick, the last time that we had David Limbaugh on, he convinced me to get rid of social media.
Yeah, so he actually did it himself live on the podcast.
And I went home and deleted my only form of social media.
Yeah.
Like I didn't delete the account, but I just got it off my phone. And one of the things that I noticed though, this happened in like middle school, and I tell this story a lot to people that are on social media, and I'm trying to tell them like, hey, you should get off of it. I remember seeing two girls that I knew, and one was really sarcastic, and the other was super serious.
Yeah.
And the sarcastic one she said some sarcastic comment to the serious one, and the serious one thought it was serious because that's her personality, but it was just typed. It didn't have any punctuation, so you just read it as a sentence.
Yeah.
And they stopped being friends. They were like best friends. They stopped being friends because it was, like you said, like void of all emotion.
Yeah.
It was just a comment, and they ended their friendship over this poor form of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been like the biggest, like, for me, like, oh, why should I use social media if that's how?
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. It's not like a uncommon thing.
Yes.
Like, oh, somebody said this to me on Facebook. I don't want to talk to them anymore.
Yeah. It's so true. And so the whole point of this talk was to establish sort of a methodology of how we can communicate well. And once again, a lot of this isn't me. I've taken this from scholars out there on how to do this because why not? But one of the topics I really wanted to hit hard, and I'll kind of do a brief overview with it here, is it's one thing to want to create a method of how to communicate well. It's another thing to believe that we should communicate well. And in order to desire to create a method, our heart needs to be changed first to want to and to realize we should communicate well. So what I did is I laid out 3 sort of biblical principles that we find, and this biblical principle seems to run true throughout everyone in general, of why we should communicate well. Not just how to communicate, the reasons why we should. And I just want to sort of lay out these 3 reasons for you. And so the first thing I found in the Bible is communicating well is important for our well-being. And let me read you some of these verses I found. This is just like 3 of the verses I found out of the tons of them. We read in Proverbs 10:21, the lips of the righteous nurse those around them. We read in Proverbs 18:21, life and death hold power in our communication. And in Proverbs 16:24, gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health of the body. And I thought about this for a second. I go, is this just some like flowery, like hyperbole or just allegory or whatever you want to put it, metaphor, whatever term you want to put to it? And I thought to a second, I don't think so. And I thought back on my last talk about what is the gospel. And I talked a little bit about what is the gospel, what sin is, right? It's a violation of command. It's a disruption of nature, a corruption of reality, right? Sin entered the world and it disrupted and distorted our peace, our harmony, our generosity, our neighborly living, our truth-telling, everything, right?
It's a disease with negative symptoms.
Yeah, it's just not some philosophical problem. It truly, in a tangible, ontological way, affected reality. And so if that's the case, couldn't we see that like sin in a real way affected in a real way our communication? Look at the garden, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it affected our communication Adam and Eve's communication with God was good. It was created good. But now our ability to hear God and sense God has been affected in a real way. So what we are striving to do as Christians, right, is to have living in the kingdom, living in what they call the here and not here, or the now and the future sense of the kingdom. We are trying to rebuild what we should have been and is going to be in the future, as it was prophesied, be made new and rejuvenated, renovated, whatever term you want to put to that, in the here and now. And so when we communicate well, we are in a real sense bringing the disrupted nature of reality, trying to rejuvenate it back to where we should have been in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that makes sense, right? With what Proverbs is understanding. Like, it nourishes the people around us. It can hold depth and power in communication. How we look at people and view people and how we like desire their lives to be is held in our communication. It's sweetness to the soul and health to the body. This is so interesting. It looks at what neuroscience, Dr. Andrew Newberg writes about this. How we communicate with gracious words and positive communication can alter the expression genes, strengthening areas in our frontal lobes and permeating the brain's cognitive functioning. Negative words can increase the activity in our amygdala, releasing dozens of stress-producing hormones and neurotransmitters, which interrupt our brain's proper functioning. We're finding through science how we communicate, what we communicate, has a real physical effect on the people and reality around us. And this makes sense. This is what the Christian worldview says. Sin has truly affected. It has affected how we live, how we communicate, and communicating in the way Christ did is, in a sense, trying to refurbish creation back to where it should have been. And we can do that with how we communicate. And so it's so important. Communicating well is extremely crucial in a real way for our well-being. And that's a very fascinating thing to think about. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think you're spot on with that, honestly.
Okay. Secondly, communicating is important because integrating all aspects of our life is crucial for being a disciple. And that just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I love Dr. Todd Lewis gives us a handful of reasons, 6 reasons why integration is important. This kind of integration is important. Let me lay out the reasons for you. If we believe the Bible's teaching are true, if we claim that our beliefs are true, we must back it up, right? Secondly, biblical teaching about the role of the mind in the Christian life and the value of extra biblical knowledge requires integration. He quotes Romans 12, 1-2, and Matthew 2, 37-38. Third, neglect of integration results in a costly division between secular and sacred. I love that point. And what that does is if we leave certain parts of the way we live out of our Christian worldview, right? Like it doesn't belong in our belief system. What we've done is we've said that this world can be divided into the secular and sacred. But as a Christian who lives in the kingdom, we look at all of reality as sacred and created and loved by God and valued, especially humanity, in a very specific sense. And we should see the world through this worldview lens of our Christian worldview. And once we separate it, we've made this distinction, which biblically we can't.
It's like the parallelogram. I think is it when you're doing like English and stuff like that, and you make like
the
two
Venn
circles,
diagram kind of thing?
Venn diagram.
Yeah.
Thank you. But it's like you have the two circles put together. You have the kingdom view, and then you have the earthly view, and you put it together.
Yeah.
And the kingdom view filters through the worldview, and it's like it because as Christians we're not living in just the world anymore. We're living in we're living for the kingdom in the world.
You shouldn't see your job at Tim Hortons as not being a place that as someone who lives in the kingdom is apart from that. You should walk in that door being, I'm going to be a Christ follower.
Exactly.
And a child of the kingdom in every aspect I do, even handing out bagels.
Yeah.
There should be no separation.
One of the things my dad always says is that if you have a Christian employee or if you're working as a Christian, the Christian should be the best employee in the building. Mm-hmm. And that's because you're not serving your boss. You're not serving the people around you in customer service or whatever you're doing. You're serving God. And so it's not so much like, oh, you're the fastest worker or you're the best bagel maker, but the fact that your purpose for living is different.
Yes. And if everything we do has a real effect on people, which I hope our listeners believe that to be true, then we should see the value and in everything we do. And if we do see the value in all that stuff, we should then deem our life as like we need to be righteous in these things.
Yeah.
Because even how we communicate in the smallest of senses, even nonverbal communication has everything to do with how people react and how that affects their dispositions. And we ought to realize that everything we do can truly affect something.
Can I add to that too?
Yeah, go ahead.
So work is like one thing, but also your online behavior should filter into that too.
100%.
How you behave in let's say you're playing video games. You're not suddenly detached from your life as a Christian.
Yeah.
Like you're still a Christian, and the way that you act on those online, like we're all going to stand before God at some point and give a testament of how we lived our lives. God's not going to sit there and be like, oh, you're online, it's different.
100%.
Like, you're on Facebook, it doesn't matter.
Right.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Like, you can make a different persona online that's not your name, but it's still you.
100%. 100%. So the last three he gives are: the nature of spiritual warfare necessitates integration. Spiritual formation calls for integration. And integration is crucial to the current worldview struggle and the contemporary crisis of knowledge. Or I summed it up with this, and I think this is a good sort of takeaway from this category of integration. Your words are connected to the fullness of your spiritual life.
Yeah.
You cannot separate how you communicate with your spiritual life. And a lot of people do. And they think, well, it's just okay. Well, everyone does it. Everyone says it. You've literally made that divide between secular and sacred. And how you communicate shows me the connection to the fullness of your spiritual life.
Yeah.
And I think it's biblical, and I think it's logical with how we understand the integrity of mankind in its actions and its words. And so that's the second reason. The third biblical reason, it's very simple. Because Jesus did.
Yeah.
Because Jesus did. And I brought up the fact that the term disciple is used 269 times in 11 forms. And simply put, you can mean a disciple as a learner or a student, right? That's why they call them rabbi, because he was their teacher. And disciples literally saw how he ate, how he walked, how he listened, how he talked. The whole goal was to mimic this person and want to be like this person. Hence the term Christians, little Christ. Our whole idea is to train under the feet of the rabbi. But the cool thing is, we have a rabbi who claims he is the second person of the Godhead.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, my Father is God. I am his literal son. I am God incarnate. And so that tells me a few things. One, he's the greatest communicator. He knows how to communicate. He knows what the person needs to hear.
He invented communication.
Right? Two, not only is there verbal communication, but they learned from his nonverbal communication, how he held himself, how he acted in certain circumstances. We have, in the Christian belief, the claim is that we have the smartest person ever living training us if we desire it. Right?
Yeah.
That's the whole understanding of this. The second person of the Godhead took on human form to show us how to live, how to act, to train us in every category of communication. Now, that is a crazy claim the Christian faith has. It's an amazing claim that we have. And the fact that we don't look at him or at scriptures and what the disciples have said, look what I learned from him. And we sort of disregard that is strange to me from the claim that Jesus is making himself. Does that make sense to you, Brother?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I don't think people look at communication in that way from the claim of who Jesus claimed he said he was. And we should also then mimic his communication. And what we find is something interesting. In John 13:34, I'm quoting Dr. Muehlhoff here. What was new is the focus of Jesus' love. Jesus' love for them, the love each of the disciples had experienced was following Christ would now serve as a standard of the Christian love. The central identifying feature of devotion to Christ is how we diligently pursue unity and resolve interpersonal conflicts that threaten it. Isn't that interesting? He goes, this is how I know you love me, how you communicate with your brothers. Dang. You know what I mean? Like churches, we should be aware of what Jesus' claim does here in John 13. How I view you as my followers, how you communicate with your brothers in Christ. And I'll tell you right now, Christian communication,
That's pretty bad.
it has gotten pretty bad. And so, that's 3 reasons why we should communicate well. It's good for our physical well-being. Integration calls for it. And because Jesus did. And so, the next portion of the talk, we moved into try to forming a methodology or a strategy, but I had a couple categories before we did that. And I think before we get into that, we need to have sort of a purpose for this methodology. right? Like, what's the point of creating a strategy if you don't have a purpose for the strategy? It's
Yeah.
sort of just willy-nilly, let's throw this in here, let's do this. Like, let's have a purpose for the strategy. And I think Kokel lays out some good purpose for the strategy when we communicate, and some of the points that he has. I had some my own points in here as well. First, when we communicate, we should desire less tension, anxiety, and awkwardness for all parties involved. Do you agree with that? Like, when your communication is tense, awkward, and it becomes anxious, like, it's terrible communication. I'm sure, Bradley, you can come up with stories of, like, you going into a conversation very weird, and it was a weird conversation.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Sometimes I do that intentionally, though, because I want a weird conversation.
Well, right. That's just Bradley. But I mean, like, how many times have you guys gone into a job interview very anxious, and it was like, for the first 10 minutes, it was weird?
Never.
You've never done that?
Never.
I've done that. I've gone into the conversations with a buddy of mine's like, hey, you need to talk to my buddy. He doesn't believe. He's not a theist, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I thought you were just talking specifically job interviews.
Oh, no, just in general.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then I started the conversation. And it was like, you could tell he went into it very awkward. And like, I'm like, do you know what I need to start the conversation with? Is like random things. Like, hey, did you see this movie?
Yeah, you need an icebreaker.
You need that icebreaker.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing to do. Second, is we need to, in a sense, I want to say stay in the driver's seat. And what I mean by that is don't control the person as some like controlling person. What I mean by stay in the driver's seat is we ought to be able to not let the conversation go.
You need to steer it in the right
haywire.
direction.
Yeah. Do you know how many times people have had conversations and all of a sudden it goes down this avenue talking about like a movie or sports car? And it's like, okay, that's good at certain times, but a lot of times people communicate, and the point of why you got into the communication never gets talked about. As a Christian, if we think what we have to offer is the truth, we ought to desire to stay on track with how we communicate. It's fine to talk about these things here and there, but it should never like go off the track in such a severe way that the whole point of us getting together to talk is just never
Mitigated, yeah.
It just never saw the light of day. And so that's what I mean by staying in the driver's seat. We ought to be able to like have a goal with our communication and get to that goal. Even though if we leave disagreeing, at least talk about the topic.
Yeah.
Third, if there are logical conclusions that don't follow, we ought to be able to present them nicely.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times where I've heard some of my I don't want to say students, but people that I lead, well, I said you're logically false. You're logically fallacious. I'm like, that's not an appropriate way to point out a logical inconsistency to someone.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not a good way to say you're logically like stupid. Like, don't say that.
Yeah. No.
You can be like, hey, I see that you mentioned this. I don't see how it leads to this conclusion. Can you help me out with that? Like,
Yeah.
that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
But just to say,
You're wrong.
straw man fallacy, like, and like screaming at the person, it's
Yeah.
just not
No.
a good way to do. We have to be able to present our defense and offense in a good manner.
And if you think that the point that someone is making is incorrect or logically incorrect, you have to be able to explain why you think it's logically incorrect and explain
Yeah.
how it's logically incorrect.
And
You
communicate
can't just
that
say,
well.
You can't just say no, it's not, or it's the Bill Bill Nye versus what's his name, Ken Ham.
Oh, that was terrible.
It's that debate all over again.
That's a really bad
You have
debate.
to
That was really bad.
It's so bad. But you have to be able to present why you think something is not true versus just saying it's wrong.
Yeah. 100%.
Like, and I just want to point
Yeah.
this out too, because I've been struggling with this, or like looking at this more recently. Not struggling, but like, yes, things can be wrong, and not all things that are wrong need an explanation for why they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're explaining to somebody that believes it's right, that a wrong is a right,
Right.
you have to explain to them why it's wrong,
Yeah. 100%.
even if it is
Yeah.
just wrong.
101. Those who, and I'm going to bring that up in the later portion, those who make the claim hold the burden of proof. 100%. So those were sort of the intentions, our are what we're aiming for in our communication. The second category I had 4 major points prior that we need to go before we communicate, especially for Christians, right? This is really important. I got a lot of these from Kokol in his book Tactics because I thought they were brilliant. And if you want more information about these, go get his book. It's a fantastic book.
Or you can listen to our podcast.
We had him on the podcast. And so the first thing I want to point out is that arguing is a virtue. And a virtue is basically a moral excellence. And what I want to defend is the term arguing. And I want to make this claim that in this day and age, the term, we don't want to bring up this idea of arguing because we are afraid of emotions, we fear division. Even in churches, we don't want to really have these hard conversations because we don't want the person to leave or the church to split. But arguing has been so held captive in the negative camp that it needs to be corrected.
Yes.
Arguing in the original philosophical understanding is basically this. I have a conclusion, and I'm going to prove my premises lead to the conclusion. And then when I offer that to you, you come back and show me if any of my premises are wrong. That's basically if A equals B and B equals C, A equals C. That's kind of basically the idea of arguing. And that's a very neutral thing. We want to be able to communicate like, hey, you said this. I don't get how this leads to this. Can you please show me? Because I have a problem with your premise 1 or your premise 2. Therefore, I don't think your conclusion's correct, right? But today and age, when we hear arguing, we think of people screaming. We think of people yelling. We think people throwing chairs and throwing fisticuffs at people. That's just not what arguing originally meant. And it's because our culture has kidnapped this term in the negative camp. And I want to take it back from that.
Yeah,
and put it in its rightful place because we can argue poorly and we can argue very well.
Yes.
And that needs to be reestablished.
Yeah, and arguing's been labeled as bad in the pursuit of tolerance.
100%.
Because, our
because
culture
that
is so,
assumption, it's just negative.
Our culture is so focused on tolerance and you do you and I do me, that arguing has no longer become a consistent form of
communication,
growth and communication.
100%. Could you imagine a world that we lived in when I couldn't go, Bradley, I need you to show me why your conclusion's right? When all we do is gridlock and run off into our corners, how can we ever discuss what is right or wrong, good or bad? Arguments don't work in a vacuum, right? We live in reality, and we need to be able to communicate things to each other. And how we do that is argumentation. Through communicating.
And the thing that even if people do argue well in today's day and age, the problem is that you have to have 2 people that go in willing to have their mind changed in the pursuit of knowledge.
Yeah, I think being wrong is a virtue.
Absolutely.
It's a moral excellence where I can go, wow, I need to change my point of view on this. And a lot of people, once again, being wrong has been stolen into the negative camp, and that you should never be wrong. And if you're wrong, don't show it, don't admit it, just hide it, tough it up, stick out your chest. And I think that once we recognize we're wrong, it's one of the wisest things we can do is go, where was I wrong? How was I wrong? And let's adjust my worldview according to this new truth that I think is correct. Yeah. Because he argued it really well.
And I think to add to that too, going in with the ability or with the mindset of my mind can be changed versus this is my belief, I'm holding to it and I will not change my belief, makes it personal.
Look at the recent...
But hang on. Just having that argument mindset, it makes it a personal belief. And so when somebody argues it, it comes off as an attack on you,
right?
And not an attack on your ideology. Yeah. And so that's part of why our arguments are so bad today.
Yeah, they can't separate.
We're not saying that you're wrong, like that you as a person are wrong. We're saying that your idea or that your belief is incorrect, and here's why. Yeah. But it's no longer about logic. It's about personal belief and personal.
It's a personal attack.
A personal attack.
Yeah, which needs to be separated. That's a good thought. The second point is, I love this idea. Reality is often difficult. And I can't tell you, and I will give you 2 assumptions that I think are forming the base of this next statement I'm going to say. And I think it's wrong. And I've heard pastors and I've heard preachers, I've heard whatever you want to say this a lot in church. All you need to do is present the gospel to them.
Oh,
That's all you need to do. And I think that fails. I think you should always present the gospel, but always presenting is not the same as only presenting. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't lead to the conclusion. So
always and only are different words.
correct. And there's two reasons why I think we need to always, but not only. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That should be a T-shirt. I'm writing that down.
I
Always,
want that as
but
a-
not only. Okay,
I want that as like a bathroom
That's
like
a-
wall quote, like just like
that's a good like tagline for an apologist.
absolutely.
The gospel, present always, but not only. So the first is this: the world is not simple. It's just not simple.
No.
You know what I mean? Let me give you an example. Sometimes there's things that we deal with that God's word, because it's this Roman Greco bibliography of them telling the story of the gospel through their lens and what Christ did. Like, there's some things that it's not going to speak to in this world because it's not meant to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, and so what we do is we have to pull wisdom and biblical principles and try to do our best in certain circumstances that Christ never directed or spoke to directly. This, because that's just how the bibliography works, right? That's just how the history works. And
Well, the Bible doesn't say anything about Facebook. You know
right,
what I mean?
exactly.
Like-
How we handle social media. Like, it can give us principles of what righteousness would look like, but it doesn't speak directly to every single
The
content.
Bible, like I said earlier, the Bible and Christ is a lens to view the world through.
Yes, it's supposed to train. It's supposed to show us what the heart of a person living in the kingdom should be.
Yes, it's boundaries of what
Yes, and
you
it's
should strive to in
it's
your
not
time.
always rules or principles across the board. It just doesn't work like that. There are some rules and principles that's a strict no because this is immoral no matter what. But there are some things that maybe like we don't know if it's moral or immoral. How should I handle this? And we look to God's word to go, maybe the Spirit's telling me that I should handle them this way because I know I might have this problem if I don't. I might need to, this might affect me if I don't. So I need to be wise about that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so to think like just presenting that the atonement is the only thing we need to know about the gospel, which by definition is not the gospel, right?
Yeah.
And we go back to the What is the Gospel podcast that I gave. We need to realize that, man, sometimes things are difficult for people. Life is difficult. And just to say, well, I just presented the cross and you're not a believer, therefore, like, tough. Like, that doesn't truly grasp the understanding of reality. One, that we experience. Two, that the Bible reflects.
Yeah.
And so
Well, it's like when you keep saying like when you say like presenting the gospel to somebody,
Yeah.
and like just hoping that that's enough.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of is Tulip the Calvinist?
yeah.
Like when Calvinism says like once you experience God's grace, you can't turn away from it. It's kind of like that thinking. To me,
Yeah, I have my own beef.
well, yeah, I know,
That
but I
could
just
be
kind of
another
want like
topic for another
that's
day. Yeah.
that's kind of what I was thinking was like it's almost like the Calvinist view of like once you experience God's grace, you can't turn away from it. It's almost like once you hear the Bible, you can't turn away from it. It doesn't
Overcoming
work
grace,
that way.
perseverance of the saints, stuff like that. Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. Like you don't put a cross amulet on somebody and they can't like not love Jesus.
Yeah.
It's not like that. You have to.
Yeah.
It's part of communicating. It's part of getting to know somebody and understanding them and bringing it up in the right context.
100%.
You can't just walk into a conversation and be like, "Hey, so Jesus died for your sins. Accept them, or you go to hell and die." That's how people have been communicating for the last 50 years, as far as Christians go, and that's why Christians have a bad reputation today.
And once again, you should always present the gospel.
Absolutely,
It's not the only thing.
yes,
And it leads to my second point. There are tons of objections, and this is coming from someone who's getting their doctorate in theology and apologetics. There are so many objections that people need to overcome before they even are willing to hear the gospel out. Let me give you an example, right? Take the belief of the Islamic faith.
sure,
that I want to tell you that Jesus died on the cross for you. They're going to go to you and offer what is called the swoon theory, and they're going to say, actually, Jesus never died on the cross, therefore, you're wrong. Now, I have a ton of arguments against it. I think it's a garbage. Swoon theory is garbage, in my opinion. I'm not even going to get into that. I could do a talk on it. Oh my goodness!
There's Roman historical documentation that Jesus died on the cross.
It goes into the character of God. I'm not. That's a whole topic for itself.
Sure. But
that's a roadblock.
Sure.
Right?
And if you don't know,
the problem of evil is a roadblock. The problem of silence from God's a roadblock. There's so many different roadblocks that people need to get over before they're even willing to hear the gospel out. And we should be prepared to be able to talk to that as well.
And the problem, if you are there's no other word for it. If you're an ignorant Christian and you aren't aware of, let's just go back to Islam. If you aren't aware of the beliefs of Islam and you try and tell an Islamic person about the gospel and only tell them about the gospel without having any prior conversation or understanding of where they come from, what they believe, how Islam works, even, and you just present the gospel, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, it's going to be there's a lot of things they need to get over first.
Yeah.
So third point I have before we get in, this is going to go into the fourth point, and I got this from Lewis and Muehlhoff. Don't reduce the gospel to a command to convert. And this is very important to understand. And I think there's a few things that we should understand with this. A lot of times people, and I've talked to many of my friends who had to come out of this viewpoint, where if I don't get the person to church and their hands aren't raised and I don't convert them or save them by the end of this lesson or this conversation, I literally have failed God, or God's not using me. I'm not in his plan. And I'm going, whoa, 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 whoa. Who has just said that the gospel is only for you to convert this person?
Yeah.
You've reduced the gospel to getting a person to raise their hand. And the gospel is as outreaching as his lordship. If we define the gospel as only one portion of what I think the good news is, we're going to realize that the only good thing they can do is to raise their hand and agree with the sentence. But in reality, I take the good news with me in everything I do, right? If we live in the kingdom, our actions should bring the good news as well. Mm-hmm. And what the gospel tells us is that we can live our everyday lives as a believer in the kingdom, and our nonverbal communication, as well as our verbal communication, can help lead people to Christ. And sometimes God is using you in one aspect, and you'll never see the fruit of your work in the long run. And that's okay. But if we reduce our only mission is to get that person to convert, you're going to see your everyday life as failure. To presenting the good news to that person. And we should not see our everyday life as that.
Yeah, and I want to add two things to that, actually. It's important to convert, or to try to convert people. It is important. It's not like like you shouldn't try and convert people because, one, I'm trying to think of the correct verse. I have the verse, but I don't have the reference. But it says, for you have been saved by grace so that no man can boast. So it's not you converting people necessarily. And the other thing is that conversion is not the only part of the Bible. Like
100%.
Like in being a Christian, like that's
100%.
not, it's part of helping you live your life in accordance to God's rule. And to go with what you're saying about like not being able to see the fruits of what you're doing in the gospel, like you may never see it. I remember the story that Wes Aram Sr. told me a couple years ago. This was like 5-10 years ago, something like, or 5-6 years ago. My bad, not 10 years. But he was a big Western fan.
Okay.
Like real big Western fan. Is John Wayne? Is that the cowboy guy?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So he was a huge Western guy, and I'm not. My grandfather is, but I'm not really. But Wes Aram was doing his daily devotions, and he has this poster of one of John Wayne's like Western movies.
Right.
And Like John Wayne's the actor, right? I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What's happening over there, Bradley?
I'm losing my mind. I'm failing to communicate.
It's the Beebs brew.
Yeah, I guess so. But he has this poster of John Wayne
Yeah.
in his office, or he had this poster of John Wayne in his office, and he was doing his devotions, and he felt like he should just pray for John Wayne just one day.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. And then the next day, he felt the same thing, like, I need to pray for John Wayne. And every single day, he was praying for John Wayne, and this went on for like 15 years. And then John Wayne died, and he was like, well, I guess, my work, all that time that I spent praying for him did nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, like, my whole time praying for his salvation did absolutely nothing. And then about a year went by of him feeling this way, and he got news that somehow on his deathbed, John Wayne accepted Jesus Christ.
That's great.
And, like, that's something like, he had no contact with him ever.
Yeah.
Ever. He just prayed for him every day. But that's something that, like, the way that you live and the way that you follow God's commands
Right.
can lead to salvation just without verbal communication.
Yeah, 100%. Dr. Muehlhoff writes this: our good works, and what he means by good works is how we live our life. I'm just giving the context. Our good works among people are a central focus of the New Testament teaching, and they are often associated directly with our witness before others. We see all throughout the New Testament, like, how you act is a witness to the person. And that leads to the fourth point that I got from Kokel, which I think is brilliant. He makes a distinction between gardeners versus harvesters, and we talked about this on the podcast. And he brings up John 4:33-38, when Jesus looks at his disciples, and when he sends them out, he's like, hey, I just want you to let you know, guys, you're about to reap where you did not sow. You're about to get people into the kingdom where you did none of the work for. And that should be helpful, right? That should take a lot of pressure off us, but should also know that it's okay if we do the gardening and someone else reaps the fruit from it, right?
Yep.
I mean, most Christians aren't people to just have a person make a conversation. And most Christians, actually, I agree with Kokel on this. Harvesters, their job is much easier than gardeners because they're not in the dirt with them, right?
Yeah.
They're not in the dirt. And a lot of people look at these pastors who get people to raise their hand, like, look at all the great work the Lord's doing through them. Like, sure, that's true. But do you know how much work that could have went into that person's life from their best friend for 15 years? And we give all of the celebrity and credit to the pastor? I don't think we should do that. In fact, the pastor should look at the congregation when people come forth and go, look what the Lord has done through all of you.
Yeah.
I just picked the fruit that was ripe.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? And it should take pressure off us, and it should realize the gospel is more than just getting the person to convert or raise their hand. It's every aspect of what you're doing. And if we are gardeners, in every conversation we have, do you know what I mean? Even if Christ doesn't come up, we are gardening.
Yeah.
That's how we should understand the integration of our lives as a disciple.
And that's why I think that, just the way that you speak as a Christian,
Yeah.
the words that you choose to use, the way that you describe things, the way that you talk about people, the way that you talk to people is important. It really makes an impact when you talk differently and use different words than the normal people do.
100%. And this is really helpful in how we form a methodology, right? And now we're going to go a little longer in this podcast just because we got to the last section of forming a methodology. And it's a 4-step methodology that I get through the literature. And I kind of want to lay this.
Can I just use a Bible verse real
Yeah,
quick?
absolutely.
So I was, thinking about that earlier because you were saying there's a bunch of verses about communication. But just, what I said just brought up James chapter 3.
All right.
Where it says the
I literally
tongue.
have that on my sheet. I didn't read it. Yep.
Oh, perfect. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person, sets the whole course of his life on fire, and itself is set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, and reptiles and creatures of the sea are being tamed and have been tamed by man, but no man can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With the tongue we can praise the Lord and the Father, and with it we can also curse men who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth we can praise and we can curse. My brothers, this should not be. And like it's kind of like the same
huge,
thing. Like,
right?
yeah, you can curse men and praise God with the same tongue. Like
Yeah.
we all do it, but it's really important to, like, obviously nobody can tame the tongue,
Yeah.
but it's important that we try to, and we trying to
Well-
exhibit that self-control.
Well, Jesus says where your heart is where your words are at.
Absolutely.
Do you see? I'm trying to remember the verse. I might have it on the sheet of paper. I got too many verses on the sheet.
And even to add to that too,
Yeah, Matthew
even
12
if-
and Luke 6.
even if you never speak a word, if you don't have a tongue or you're a mute, that still applies to you because we communicate even without words.
100%. And that's why I think that's another good example of a defeater for people. Like, well, presenting the gospel is the only thing we need to do, right?
Yeah.
One, we see that that's false. The gospel is way more than that. But what happens if all of a sudden someone's mute? They can't be used by God?
Yeah.
Well, that's false because communication is way more than just verbal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can live in this reality in the kingdom and present the good news and be gardeners through our lives. So so I have a 4-point step that I get from the literature, a lot of it from Coco, a lot of it from Lewis and Muehlhoff. When it comes to, if you guys want any good book references, feel free to email us or shoot us a message on our social media or Instagram. I'm more active on Instagram for the Caffeinated Christian podcast, so I can send you some links to some books. And so here's a 4-step way we can help communicate better that we see Christ do within Scripture. Because if we're trying to be like Christ and communicate like the smartest person, the best communicator, we should mimic him, right? And so here's a 4-step plan that we can have when it comes to communication. The first step is gathering information, right? Ask a lot of questions. Basic dialogue, general questions, like what do you mean by that? When you say this, can you clarify this? Precisely how? And there's a lot of reasons why we want to do this. One, we don't want to misunderstand and misrepresent the person. And this is very helpful because if I'm trying to speak to you what is true, I want to be able to understand what you believe so that I can enter the conversation at the right point. And it's the same way we also don't want the person to misunderstand their own point of view. Because if they're thinking, like, I believe this, the person says, but in reality, that's not like a fundamental belief.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I want to get to the point. I want to get to the heart of the conversation so that I can really affect the truth. I really want to affect your worldview better. And so I want to get to the heart of the matter. I don't want to misrepresent or misunderstand. And I don't want you to misrepresent or misunderstand yourself because if I'm presenting the truth, I want them to know what they truly mean. Third, ask questions helps you open up the person's assumptions to be able to enter the conversation. And fourth, it allows you to see errors if there are much better. And here's the funny thing is we see Jesus do this all the time. This isn't just some rare thing. Let me give you some questions of Jesus and let me read you some statistics, which are really interesting. We've heard this question out of Jesus. Why do you call me good? Whose face is on the coin? Who do you think was more of a neighbor? Who do you think I am? Do you want to get well? And he did this to open up the assumptions.
Yeah. And Jesus isn't asking that because he doesn't know. It's to get to
he wants to get the person
answer.
to know, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Martin Copenhaver, in his book, The Questions of Jesus, I actually read the book. It's a fantastic book. Let me give you some statistics that he gives of Jesus. He went through the entire New Testament, right? We see in the entire the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, or the Gospels according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus asks 307 different questions.
Jeez.
307 different questions. He himself was only asked 183 questions. So he asked 307 personally, and out of the questions that were given to him, only 183. Listen to this. Out of the 183 questions that was asked to him, he only directly responds to 8. That means 170. Wait. That math's wrong. Wait. No, that's right. 175. He answered with either a question or a story that ends in a question. He's roughly 40 times more likely to ask a question than he is to give a direct answer, and roughly 20 times more likely to offer an indirect question than to answer in a direct one.
Can I theorize why that is?
Isn't that crazy? Well, I think
Well, I mean,
it helps conversation.
well, yeah, but I think that if you give a direct answer, it ends the conversation. And Jesus wanted to
Get deeper.
He wanted to get deeper, but he also wanted to communicate better. And so I think that by asking more questions, it prolongs the conversation and brings out more ways on which you can present the gospel.
Yeah. Also, what the communication scholars say is Jesus did this because what they call all communication works within what are known as systems. And in systems, there are really four main categories of what they call presence of noise. And let me give you the four categories: physical, physiological, psychological, and semantic. So these are the four categories of the main presence of noise that all happens in communication in the background. And a lot of these questions are not only getting to open up the assumptions and understanding, but these people have these misunderstandings and assumptions because you cannot work in a communication system without this background noise. And like physical, right? It's elements within our environment. Temperature, background, crowds, lighting, all different types of things. Physiological, it's like hunger, fatigue, illness. Psychological, thoughts and feelings. And semantic, words we use are not understood in the same way by people. I mean, it doesn't take very far to look at Scripture to see Jesus, when he asked the questions, took the background noise in consideration while asking the questions.
Yeah.
Right? We see in Luke 9, when talking about like food, right? Physiological, when he breaks the bread and asks the disciple all these questions. John 14, the Samaritan feeling of shame, psychological. In John 3:3, Nicodemus misunderstood what born again means, and he asked them these questions of like, well, what do you mean by this? And Nicodemus goes, I can't be put back in. He goes, no. Are you supposed to be a teacher of the law? And he starts breaking these things down for him, right? And so we see all of these background noises within Jesus. Yeah, it's really cool. Psychological thoughts and feelings. My goodness. Physiological hunger. You don't have to go at physical elements. I mean, like, just everything we saw, Jesus took the background. Look at the wedding. He took in the physical understanding of what that meant, of water into wine, and the extreme sort of background of the crowds of what they would have understood if they ran out of wine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting to think of all these factors about conversation.
That he knew and took it in consideration when asking these questions.
Yeah, and
crazy.
We don't even think about a lot of the times what's going on during a conversation. Like as far as like noise, I just heard you set your coffee cup down. Everything's echoey because this room has awful acoustics.
Yeah.
Everything's a little bit muted because I got the headphones on. I'm thinking about going home because I haven't been home all day.
Mm-hmm.
And we're having a conversation, so I'm also thinking about the Bible. And it's like there's so many factors that go into a communication that you don't think about.
Yeah, 100%. So the next point is reversing the burden of proof. And this is my favorite one. And it's simply this: the person who makes the claim holds the burden of proof. The person who makes the claim holds the burden of proof. I can't tell you how many times people are like, well, so-and-so said this. It's like, okay, like...
But why do you say it?
Well, right, exactly. Well, this is just the case. Well, why? Well, it just is. It's like, why would I believe you? Because you said it?
Yeah.
Like, where's your argument for this? And we live in a day and age where people just stating their opinion is an argument. But arguments aren't opinions. They're arguments.
Yeah,
They're opinions. Arguments are arguments.
And we also live in a day and age where you can say that that's your truth. And it's like, it's kind of like bubbling up reality and making it your own thing. Like, I don't know. It's so frustrating when people say it's your truth.
My whole work is on relativism within Gen Z. It's interesting.
But like that goes with it. Like, you can't just blatantly say something like that where it's clearly not true. Like, because truth is a real thing. Like,
100%.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't just say it because you heard it somewhere.
Yeah.
You have to be able to back up why you think that your truth is different than my truth.
Yeah, it reminds me of...
Or than the truth.
It reminds me of in John 18 when Jesus stands before the high priest and he's asking the questions. Is is it you who say that? Or then, I'm talking about like the whole conversation of them trying to interrogate him to get him to make these accusations of who he is. And then Jesus responds to him and the guard slaps him. And he looks at the guard and he goes, where have I said anything wrong? Tell me, or else why did you slap me?
Yeah.
He literally goes to the guard, like, you just being a guard, it doesn't give you the reason to do this. Where did I deserve that? You have to tell me where. Or else why the heck did you do it?
Yeah.
Even Jesus reversed the burden of proof. In fact, I am confident that we can reverse the burden of proof by asking someone for life change. You say you believe this? Well, I need to see it in your life. And in Mark 10 and Mark 19, we see an interesting story with Jesus and the rich man. And the rich man comes to Jesus and he goes, what else do I need to do to be saved? And Jesus knows the heart of the rich man, right? Mm-hmm. He says, here's all the law. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And he goes, yeah, I did all that things. And what does it say? Jesus looked at this man and loved him. He goes, but you're missing one thing. Sell all your stuff and follow me.
Yeah.
And because he knew the thing that was interfering with this person truly becoming his disciple is his fear of losing his money and his wealth. And Jesus says, if this is truly what you believe, like, get it out of your way and follow me. Mm-hmm. If this is what you're telling me you believe, this is how you can show it. And I want you to follow me. I love you, he says. And this is how you're going to get rid of those bad habits. Get rid of this stuff that's in your way. And what happens? Rich man never follows him.
Nope.
And Jesus goes, if this is what you're saying, do this. And he reversed the burden of proof. He's like, this is how you can show me. This is how you can affect. And it just doesn't help. This doesn't happen.
Nope.
And so the third step is this: using questions to make a point. So you ask a question to get information. You then reverse the burden of proof. And once you really narrow down the focus of the conversation, use more questions to make the point more serious. And we don't have to go any farther than seeing the story of the Samaritan, right? Where he stands up in the middle of the crowd and goes, okay, blah, 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 blah. Who's the neighbor of this person? Jesus goes, what does the law say? And so he asked the first question. The law said this, and Jesus knew that the Jew was going, okay, I know what you're thinking. He goes, let me tell you a story. And so he tells him a story, and what does he do after that again? He asks them the very next question. Who then is the neighbor? You know what I mean? Like, He goes, okay, I see where your view is. Do you know what? Let me tell you the story, and here's how I ended in a question. And he really pinpointed the question. He put him between the Jewish person, the lawyer, between the rock and the hard place, because he wants him to answer, no, the neighbor is just the Jewish person.
Yeah.
Right? That's who I consider the neighborly. And he goes, in this story, who do you consider to be truly the good person?
Yeah.
And he almost reductio ad absurdum. Like, if you want to say the other people, everyone's going to look at you like you're nuts.
Yeah, and you're not just asking senseless questions that have no value
100%
to the point that you're trying to make. You're trying to
make them more pointed to get really narrow the focus of it. And the last is what I call the walk away. Know how to finish the conversation. We are terrible in our society about this. 1, be thankful they allowed you in the conversation. 2, let them know you'll think about what they have said some more. 3, let them know and not feel that you think they're dumb. 4, be willing to talk again. And 5 is my favorite one. Don't undo the work you have just done.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen conversations with people where they're doing some really good work and all of a sudden they conclude with like, well, do you know what? It's really up to you, whatever works for you. Oh. And I'm like, no. You just took a few steps forward and a giant mile backwards. Like, we're in a conversation. Yeah, we're in a conversation to really investigate truth in our worldviews. Mm. And this person or you, whatever the case may be, is coming around to go, man, I really think you might be right. But then you decide it doesn't matter. Do whatever works for you. Like some pragmatism's correct or something like that.
Yeah.
We need to be able to leave the conversation well and be able to want to have a conversation more with other people and just leave it well. And a lot of times we are just not good at doing that. So let's sum up before you close up, Riley.
Sure.
We talked about the importance of communication, where our communication has went, and we saw that online communication has really affected us. And then we took a look at 3 reasons why we should communicate well. It's good for our health. Its integration requires it as a disciple, and that because Jesus did. And we saw how all these tied together with our methodology. And before we went into the methodology, we talked about the goals: less tension, anxiety, stay in the driver's seat, present logical consequences nightly, less effort, and keep a kingdom character. I think I might have left that out. And keep a kingdom character throughout it, and which is really
that's
important.
probably one of the most important ones, and you just left it out.
Sorry, I got excited. Then we saw arguing as a virtue, that reality is difficult. Don't reduce the gospel just to a command to convert, and that there's a distinction between gardeners and harvesters. And then we saw the steps: ask questions, reverse the burden of proof, ask more questions to be really pointed with it, and have a fantastic walk away.
Sure. Let's just talk real quick about what a kingdom character looks like.
Okay.
Just because that is really important.
Absolutely.
Because obviously, like, you can have these screaming matches today.
Yeah.
That you just go online and you look at, I infiltrated this rally.
Yeah.
Or I went to this march.
Yeah.
And you just see these people that just sit there and they scream at each other.
Yeah.
Or I think of, and I'm not saying he's good or bad, but I just think of the one time of, Alex Jones. Do you know who that is?
Oh, yes. Yep. Don't be like Alex Jones, guys.
But I just remember he went to some type of
so
march or something like that, or like rally, and he rode in a tank with a big megaphone, and he just shouted down everybody there. And the video was hysterical, but it accomplished absolutely nothing for what he was trying to accomplish.
Once again, we're not saying that everything he said was necessarily false. We're saying the way he communicated is what we shouldn't be mimicking.
Yeah, and we shouldn't be mimicking the world to communicate kingdom matters.
Correct.
Like we were saying with the church, like the church is trying to adopt the world's view of social media to communicate the gospel.
And we're finding statistically it's ending up in a terrible, terrible location.
Yeah.
And
the church, can I just say too, the church and the gospel as a whole transcends culture.
Yeah.
It's not culture dependent. It's lived in how many different cultures over how many years?
Yeah, it's the good news.
And it, you know what I mean? Like Chinese, like ancient Chinese culture is different than modern American culture and old English culture. Like they're all different. And the gospel has lived in every single culture and has been relevant in every single culture.
Yes.
So
And the reason why it's relevant, because people need the good news.
Yes, but what we should do is not take culture and define the gospel through culture. We should define culture through the Bible.
Yes. Yep.
And so we should stop trying to, hey, culture says, this thing. And so we're going to pin the Bible in this parameter.
It's very nuanced, and we sometimes make these decisions so they're just so easy and simple. And sometimes we throw the baby out with the bathwater, and it's just an unwise thing to do. Just an unwise thing to do. But before we have Bradley sign you out, I want to do a quick announcement for Meeting on Main, if I can, for the next talk. If any of you guys are interested in the talk we just had, it came from my lecture at Meeting on Main Ministries at Pastor Mike's church at Centerpoint Community Church. You can find him at Centerpoint Community out in it's on Burlington, 56 Burlington in Depew. Come check them out Sundays. Or my talk for Meeting on Main Ministries is going to be August 18th from 6 to 8. I'm going to be doing a defense of miracles. And so I'm going to be discussing what miracles are, looking at the philosophical arguments against them. And then I want to spend a lot of time in soaking you guys in the miraculous reports.
And we will have a follow-up podcast on that as well.
Yeah.
We will try and do both the talk and a discussion on it. So we'll have 2 episodes on that.
Hopefully this time we can record the talk and then come back into discussion. So I'm excited for that, and hopefully you guys like this podcast on the last talk, and we still have some good podcasts down the line that we're going to be producing, and we keep trying to get more people on and more topics. And hopefully you guys continue to subscribe and pass this podcast forward to your friends and other people within the church. Communication.
You know the thing.
Yeah, exactly. So Bradley, why don't you go ahead and sign us out?
All right. So thank you everybody for listening. If you'd like to see more, you can always check out our other podcast episodes. We have a lot that you can check out, 3 different seasons, actually, of different podcasts and different topics. So if you enjoyed this, please share it with a friend. And also, if you're on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating. It helps us in the algorithms. It helps more people find us. And if you would like to communicate with us, you can find us on both Instagram and Facebook at the Caffeinated Christian Podcast.
Yes.
Ryan is pretty active on Instagram. I don't know about Facebook.
Kind of on Facebook.
Okay, so if you want to reach out, you can direct message us on Instagram.
Yeah.
You can also email us at thecaffeinatedchristian706@gmail.com. That's thecaffeinatedchristian706@gmail.com. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.